Hello, my name is Scott Lancaster. I am one of the research and instruction librarians here at Waters Library at A&M Commerce. And I'm going to give a short webinar today on iThenticate, which is a product that the graduate school uses to process work that graduate students write and submit. I was one of the first people that was asked to use this item here on campus, and I've processed theses, dissertations at all levels, from the proposal through whatever drafts they might have done. And also a few times people have asked for their comprehensive exams to be put through iThenticate. So I've got a short PowerPoint that I'm going to go through, and then at the end we'll look at the interface. iThenticate is actually something that was created for publishing business, so that people, academic journals could run the articles through before they even went to peer reviewers to check for any kind of plagiarism, or what is sometimes euphemistically called unoriginality. And it has since been brought into use by academic institutions. And it's important to understand how copyright and plagiarism are alike, and how they overlap, but how they're different. Copyright infringement is using someone else's creative work without authorization or compensation. And it is a violation of the law, and it is punishable by the law with usually with a fine of some kind. Plagiarism is using someone else's work without giving proper credit, a failure to cite adequately. It's an ethics violation, or it's a moral problem. They do overlap. You can plagiarism, when you don't say where something came from. Copyright is when you take it without permission. Sometimes you can do both. Sometimes you're taking something that there is no copyright over because the person that wrote it is long since dead, or it's always been in the public domain. So there isn't any legal jeopardy you're in, but you are you're committing a sort of a moral offense when you take that and you don't give proper credit for who wrote it. The definition of copyright is a copyright gives the author of a literary, musical, dramatic, artistic, or other creative work the exclusive right to reproduce, distribute, perform, or display it for a fixed period in order to encourage creative activity. Copyrights are not unlimited, however. The fair use policy, for instance, allows limited use of copyrighted material for research, teaching, journalism, and other reasons without the author's permission. That is why that you can use portions of copyrighted material in your academic writing, and you are allowed to do that by the fair use policy. However, you have to cite it properly, not so that you're not plagiarizing it. And actually, copyright is something that is integral to our society. It is in the first article of the Constitution. So it's a very basic fundamental right of people to have the ownership of their creative work. On the other hand, then you've got plagiarism, which comes from the Latin term plagiaris, or kidnapper. It's the act of taking someone else's work, ideas, or designs and representing them in published materials, such as theses, reports, articles, etc., as one's own work. And A&M Commerce defines plagiarism as literary theft or fraud. It is the ultimate academic offense. Avoiding unoriginality is a required skill of scholars and is learnable. Such learning is made easier through the use of iThenticate. iThenticate is a valuable safeguard for researchers by helping them find and fix problems before submitting their work. Documents such as research papers and dissertations are uploaded to be scanned by the software and cross-checked against repositories of published works. The system then provides a report matching areas of the scanned document where there might be significant overlap with another published document. The system points only to issues of possible plagiarism. Users must look closely at each instance to determine if it had been correctly cited. So as I'll show you, you really have to interpret the report. It's not just going to be 100% understood as the way that it is. It has to be interpreted. This is what a report looks like, and I'll show you more clearly. It will give you a percentage up here. This is a very high percentage of 82% that indicates this is mostly copied from somewhere else. You might have heard of Turnitin. Ithenicate and Turnitin are actually from the same company. But unlike Turnitin, Ithenicate does not retain submissions. So you can run the paper as many times as you need, and the comparison sources are only published scholarly documents rather than classroom papers. With Turnitin, which is kind of a controversial thing about Turnitin, when student work is submitted to Turnitin, it becomes part of the database of material that future items are compared against. And there's a lot of controversy about doing that, but that's not an issue in Ithenicate. When something is submitted to Ithenicate, it does not become a part of the material that is then used in the future. Ithenicate measures similarity between multiple published documents and the document under examination. And it produces a similarity score, which is a percentage. It's the total amount of the text or words in sequence of a document that is in common with published sources divided by the total number of words in the document of interest. And then particularly because this is something that people here want to know about, what does A&M Commerce expect of this percentage? So how much similarity is too much? Grant proposals submitted to federal agencies use a cutoff score of 10% similarity. So it has to be 10% or less. The graduate school here at A&M Commerce currently uses a score of 12% as its aspirational goal. That's not hard set. I mean, there could be reasons why you would go over 12%, but if you're under 12%, then it's generally good as long as everything's cited properly. However, a score higher than 12% does not necessarily mean an unacceptable level of unoriginality. Interpretation is needed. Some disciplines like chemistry and mathematics have chemical structures and formulas that must be expressed in a standard way. So for some disciplines, scores higher than 12% cutoff score might be acceptable. However, experience suggests that the 12% score is appropriate for most theses and dissertations. So when a document is prepared, just so that you can understand on your end what is done, because the student doesn't do it, students don't have access, don't have a sign-in to Ithenicate. Full-time faculty will have that log that can submit that. They don't all do it because sometimes they refer people to me or a few other people like me that are sort of given the task of being available to produce these reports. So typically when someone sends me a report, I remove all of the preliminary pages. So I take out the title page, I take out the table of contents, I take out any like lists of tables and figures. I take out the abstract. And I also take out everything at the end. So I take out all of the references or the bibliography. I take out any appendices and I take out the vita. Sometimes I also remove tables and figures because even though IThenticate wants you to submit a Word file for the report to be made. The report that I have to give back to the student is a PDF document. And if it's got a lot of tables or especially images in it, it's going to make that PDF file huge and too big to send. So sometimes I also have to strip out any images that are in it. But generally, all I want is a Word document with the text from like the beginning of chapter 1 to the end of the last chapter. If someone gives me a PDF document, I can convert it to Word and work with it, but I don't know whether other faculty can do that. But just be aware that it has to be a Word file in order to go into Ithenicate. There are settings that are set by the person who is submitting the document. We set it to not exclude quotes. So it's going to include things that are in quotation marks and that are indented because we want to know how much of your thesis or dissertation is not original. We're going to assume, or we're going to check to make sure it's all cited properly, but we want to know overall how much of it is not original. And the excluding small matches, the standard that the graduate school uses is 9 words. So if it's 9 words or less from any one source, it's going to ignore that and assume it's just a coincidence of some kind. This is an example of what a report looks like when I'm looking at it on my end. It will show, this shows the first page on the left, and then on the right, you see a similarity score of 19%, which of course is over the 12% that the graduate school wants. So we're going to have to work with that and somehow bring it under 12%. And it shows the matches on the right. And this one has a number of matches, but they're going to be in order of the biggest matches down in sort of size order down to the smaller matches. So you'll say we started with this match of 176 words, and then it goes down further. And we'll look more closely at this one in a minute. This is what the report that I send the student is like. So when I'm looking at it in my logged in interface, I see this, but then I have to create a PDF document to give to the student to then take to their advisor and show what their score is. And this is what it looks like. It has all through it, it's highlighted and it's got numbers to it, like this is 59. And then all the way at the end of the document, you're going to have a number of pages that show all of the sources that the similarity has been found in. And I'll show you what this document looks like too. The online report is dynamic. That's one feature that is not in the PDF document that I give the student. So like if I click on this, I can pull up a box that shows what the original source looked like. So I can see that this part of a sentence is coming from this website, this blog. And if I want to go to the actual blog itself, I can click on full source view and it will take me to that. You don't have that in the PDF document. You have to just go to the end of the document and find it yourself. So this is what I wanted to sort of get into was then you're getting a score that's the main thing your advisor wants is a score of 12% or less. But there are things that I can do to work with people, or at least to advise people on how they might lower this. And with this score of 19%, of course, this person is going to be anxious to know, what can I do to bring this down? And the first thing I do is just start at the topmost similarity, the one that has the most copying from it. And you click on that and it takes you to it in the page. And then I look and see, can I reduce this in some way? I don't know in this case whether the person could reduce it because it's a list of it's a list of principles. And maybe that needs to be, included like that. I don't know. But then if we decide, okay, we have to leave that the way it is, then I would just suggest going further and further down the list. And you've got to find something that has to be dropped or paraphrased, reduced in some way. And in this case, I found a couple of other matches later in the document, these really long quotations. And the writer is going to have to find places where some of these long quotations are either going to be greatly reduced or they're going to be just paraphrased. And because we've got to get that score down to 12. I also find often that there can be corrections that might come up. If I see something like this, that I see they've sort of paraphrased a little, but they've used too much because it's being highlighted. You wouldn't want to see any highlighting in a proper paraphrase because you're not going to use enough of their original words unless they're titles or laws or something like that. You're not going to see enough of it to warrant it being highlighted. And you can see here, including with this 24, that's all coming from this source in this article in the Washington Post. But there's even these phrases here are taken from that. So this person either needs to totally rework that so it's written in different language, or just make it a complete quotation where it's not just a few words here and a few words there. But of course, they might not want to do that because this is from that 19% dissertation. You can also find incidents of plagiarism where the source has been cited. You can see here it's in parentheses, Cohen and Braw, but there are no quotation marks. So this is being represented by the writer as if it were a paraphrase, but you can tell it's almost a direct copy and paste of the original, with the exception of they took one word here in the middle. They changed for to of. And that's not enough of a change to make it a paraphrase. So I often point out to people that they need to look where there are missing quotation marks and make sure those quotation marks are in place. And again, this is just an example of another copy and paste, but there is not even a citation here saying where this came from. So I mean, and you can see that this entire passage, with the exception of a couple of words that have been changed, have been lifted from this source. I also often look for gaps in quotations as a possible error that the writer has made in transcribing the quotation. So you can see here, this has got quotation marks around it. So it is a direct quotation. But what jumps out to me is that there are places within the quotation that are not highlighted. And if this were a direct quotation, you would expect it to all be highlighted. So some way the writer might have made an error in transcription. It's also possible there's an error in this source. So I would, in this instance, I would just tell this person, go back to your original source, Lurie, page 1 and 2, and make sure that this is cited or this is quoted exactly as it's supposed to be, because you don't want the mistake to be on your end. And that is all in the, now I want to look at the actual interface. So I'm going to go to Okay, this is what the report looks like. This is the one with 19%. And if I click on what I would do if I were trying to work this to make it smaller, I just start at the top and I look here and I decide, is this something I can change? If it's not, I go on to the next one and I get this long quote here. And again, I need to check, why is this the effect not highlighted? Is it something I did, or is it a mistake in iThenticate, or is it a mistake in the document iThenticate is pointing to? I just double check it. But then this could be one that could possibly be reduced or paraphrased. You can see from these ellipses here, the writer has already cut out something in the middle of this, and they're going to need to probably cut out more if they want to reduce it. And then I wanted to go to number 3 to show you. If I click on the arrow here, it will show me the sources that this is coming from, because sometimes it finds it in more than one source because it's been quoted by somebody else. But also this shows match 1 of 5, which means there are 5 areas that have been matched to this one document. So the 141 words are spread out among other places within the document. And so you can look through and see all of those. There could be areas within this 19% that are unwarranted. And it's certainly, when you go down to the bottom, we might find places where there's standard phrases that we should cut out, or long titles like "No Child Left Behind," or some particular law or something. So it can always be, we need to just look at all the similarities to make sure whether there are any things that we need to adjust about the report. And I want to show you now what the student report looks like. So this is the report from that one that showed it 19%. What I give the student, a PDF document, and it looks like how it looked on my screen. However, you're not able to click on anything, and you're not even really able to see here what this is referring to. You just have to remember, okay, this is match 59, and there could be other places in the document that are highlighted with the number 59. You have to go all the way to the end, and this is the beginning of the originality report. This is where your advisor is going to look to see what the similarity index is. But if I wanted to know about that first match, number 59, I come here, and it's from this Gelpy article, and it's only 12 words from it. So I would either figure out a way to redo that so that I don't get any matches there in my move to try to get them to be as little as possible. And finally, there is a page on the graduate school if you go to the graduate school website, and under thesis and dissertation services, there is a link for information about iThenticate, which gives you the background information, a lot of it that I've gone over. as well as some additional sources that you might use. That's all that I really had. I wanted this to just be, this is the first that I've done of a 30-minute session. And as you know, I've done Ithenicate reports for several, I mean, 8 or 10 years now. And I've become aware that students don't really know much about what the report looks like. And you know what, because they're not able to see it from our end. So I wanted to point out what the report looks like to you, as well as a few things that I've learned as I've advised students of how to use the report beyond just getting a percentage number, but looking for places that you might have made errors and you can correct things. But did you have any questions?
You mentioned this is primarily used for thesis and dissertations. Is there something that a student can use for shorter papers, you know, like the regular research papers within a class that's like the 12-page research paper, stuff like that?
Well, not that I know of that a student has access to. If you brought a paper to me and I didn't have any, I mean, I'll double check, but I've put things through for I've certainly put things through for faculty before that have asked if they have something they're going to get published. So if it's a longer paper that you want checked, I can do it if you bring it to me, or you can just email it to me. Because this was actually, you know, the university got it for faculty to use with their writing, and then the graduate school thought it would be a good idea to start using it with graduate student papers. And you know, as I discovered, they also wanted to include comprehensive exams with it. So I don't see any reason why that longer research papers in classes couldn't be included in it. And so unless I'm told otherwise, I'll be happy to produce those reports. It wouldn't have the problem with Turnitin that I encountered when I was helping a student and I put his paper through Turnitin to check it, not thinking about the fact that then Turnitin was going to make his paper part of its database. So after he turned it into his professor, the professor put it through, and of course got like 100% match that made it look like this guy was turning in someone else's paper. So I had to explain it, you know, so you won't have that problem with Ithenicate. So I'll be happy to, you know, to do, unless I'm told otherwise, to do any papers you bring to me. I mean, it doesn't take but, you know, 5 minutes to create the report.
It seems like it would be helpful in, you know, trying to look at how you're writing.
Yeah, and I mean, it does say on the, it says on the graduate school page, it says the whole point of this is to teach students how to write in, you know, in a way that, you know, eliminates this, what they're calling unoriginality. So I think it would be, yeah, it's desirable. You're supposed to be teaching people, and you know, you have to see what it looks like, you know, because I mean, a lot of it, plagiarism, or I would imagine most of it is unintentional because people don't really understand. But if you see a report, you can begin to understand. And if you need to like look at the dynamic side of it, like I had been, you know, I can do a Zoom meeting with you and I can share my screen and we can look through, you know, where I can click on the thing and open up the original places that it's matching to. But you have, what is it that you're studying? Is it education?
I'm in the counseling program.
Okay. Yeah, anytime, anything, I work primarily with graduate students, anything I can do to help you, I'd be glad to.
That'd be great.
Are there any other questions?
That's the only question I had.
Okay, well, thank you, Janice. And
Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.